I think they knew how to express themselves in the plural sense when they wanted to. And then they talk about his, Moshecho, his Messiah. They don't say it in the plural, which would be a different pronoun in Hebrew than plural. Anyway, all that. Then we now have texts, which actually, one of the texts that we published in the Dead Sea Scrolls and Covers talks about the Shiloh prophecy from Genesis. Until the Shiloh will come, it's Jacob's blessings to Judah at the end of Genesis. I think it's Genesis 45 or something like that. And we have a Genesis Pesher that's in the Dead Sea Scrolls Uncovered. Also on his way down to San Diego. This is the kind of thing that I talked to the group about. They were really excited about, because I could tell them why that was important, that particular fragment that they have from the Genesis Pesher. Anyway, it speaks about the Messiah of righteousness, singular, and that's an incredible one. The Messiah of righteousness. And then two other documents now speak about the Messiah in the singular sense. So, and the Qumran is very messianic. Try to show you those as we go along. So anyway, let's go back to this parallel to, or this seeming correspondence perhaps to Matthew. To prosper on the good things of the earth. And they understood their sinfulness and knew they were guilty men. Here we have, and they perceived their iniquity and recognized they were guilty. Okay, that's the same thing. Yet they were like blind men and groped for the way for 20 years. Were groping for the way for 20 years. So much in that little, these sentences are pregnant with meaning. Most people just read this book and just, blah, 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 that's interesting, and they read it, they have no idea what's being said here. Nobody really did stop at it. But again, if you teach it over and over and over and over again for 30 years, you begin to see stuff. Maybe you're going mad. I don't think that's the case. But you begin to see things. I don't expect you to see them. I hope it helps for me to go through it with you. You could read this 100 times and probably not see that. They were like blind men. Oh, remember that passage? Every plant which my heavenly Father has not planted shall be uprooted. But they are blind guides. They are the blind leading the blind, and both shall fall into the pit. We shall have the pit language here in the Damascus document. But guess what comes next? And God considered their works. Oh, here is my friend Vermesh. And God observed their deeds. No, no, no. You can't switch words. It's the same word as the beginning. It's works. Deeds is less important. You'll agree with me. He also uses acts sometimes. No, no, no. It's the same word in Hebrew. Over and over again, stick to the same word. God considered their works. Works righteousness. Not deeds righteousness, okay? That's how things get a little bit sort of out of alignment. Because they sought him with a whole heart, and he raised up for them a teacher of righteousness to guide them in the way of his heart. They are blind guides. Let the blind lead the blind, and both shall fall into the pit. Oh, you mean to tell me you can have that kind of language in 4 lines here in the Damascus document, paralleling? Of course, it's been transformed into something entirely different, and there's no relationship between the two. Internal Revenue checks people's emails or something. They found these keywords. Would be on you in a moment. But anyway, that's not the point. The point what I'm trying to make here is that the writers of whatever Jesus is saying there, and I don't think Jesus said those things because I don't think there was a tape recorder around. And, the Gospel of Judas, the Gospel of Thomas have totally different sayings. And John doesn't even have this material and so on. Everyone has a different version of their Jesus, if ever writing creatively. As I said in the introduction to my James book, Plato wanted to bar the poets from the ideal republic. Why? Because they wrote the myths by which the general person lived. In those days it was God men like Hercules and so on. And for Plato, this was a world of almost total darkness. You know, the cave image in Plato, all those people were chained within the cave, and only the philosopher went out and looked at the light and knew what the shadows on the wall meant. That's the cave image in Plato's Republic. Particularly philosophy is philosophy, not just 101, philosophy 1, period. Someone said all of philosophy is a footnote to Plato, and say, well, it's Socrates, isn't it? Well, yeah, Plato's putting his words into Socrates' mouth, the same as is normal in that period. Put your ideas into someone else's mouth was just normal. Do you think Socrates said all those things? I don't know, maybe, maybe not, I doubt it. Some of them maybe. Plato didn't mind because Socrates was a known person, and that was okay, so he put all his ideas into Socrates' mouth, maybe truthfully, maybe not. But it doesn't matter. The point here is that he raised up a teacher of righteousness to guide them in the way of his heart. Okay, to my mind, there it all is. So I would say the writers of the Gospel of Matthew knew this document and were playing off it. You know what playing off meant? Using the words and producing another meaning. Quite a clever meaning, too. Nothing wrong with the meaning, really funny, interesting. And by the way, Pharisee at that point probably is not the real Pharisees, but that's another, the New Testament is using the word Pharisee sometimes to be the Jamesian party in the Jerusalem church. We know that, don't we, from what chapter of Acts? I read it to you once, but I'll read it to you again, and I was just reading it to you. It's again Acts 15. It's the introduction to the Jerusalem Council. So, for instance, we hear that Paul and his friends are at Antioch, whatever Antioch that might be, we'll leave in advance. And some from Jerusalem had come down, some from Judea. You know, the people in Galatians come down from Jerusalem. Those, Paul says in chapter 2 of Galatians, who are of the circumcision. Some from James, he says. Watch the word some, it's the same. If we need a Greek, it's the same. Some in the Gospels, and Paul always, often, and always, but very often relates to the James party. It's contemptuous. Some came down and were teaching the brothers, unless you are circumcised, this is the party of the circumcision, that does cause this council in Jerusalem in Acts, but in Galatians, it causes an argument between Peter and Paul over table fellowship, and then Paul, as you know, goes on to call Peter a hypocrite and Barnabas too, because they were used to eat with Gentiles, but when the some from James came, the party of the circumcision, they stopped doing that.